Hi everybody, Steven here. In this video, we're going to talk about how do I set up my VMware Cloud Foundation version 9 management domain. So I'm going to take you through step by step, starting off with the ESXi host and with the VCF installer, and then getting everything ready for that. So stick around. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. So as I mentioned, in this one, we're going to actually talk about how do we set up our first VCF instance. I got a bit of a review here because there's been some changes. If you've watched my VCF version 5 videos, I would suggest watching those. They're still valid. There are some big changes since version 5, so you're going to want to take a look at those videos as well. But anyways, before we begin, I got a small little lecture component, then we'll dive right into the demo. And I always like to throw this out at this part here, right? So if this is stuff that you're interested in, please consider supporting the channel. It's totally free. Just hit that subscribe button, you know. Also, other ways to support the channel is leaving comments, sharing the videos, all that stuff helps with the YouTube analytics. And I also have super thanks enabled, but that's totally up to you. So why don't we get started? Okay, so Cloud Foundation, just a quick review. Basically what it is, it allows you to create your own private cloud. Essentially when we look at it, it is basically a combination of compute resources like vCenter and ESXi host, storage, vSAN, let's say, NSX for our networking. So it's got all those, and management as well. We'll talk about that. There's been some changes there. And it has all those combined as one single product, right? Things have changed since version 5. So basically, you have VCF is going to basically have all those products. You'll be licensed for it, okay? Now, a couple of terms is VCF fleet. Well, with VCF, a VCF fleet is basically a fleet of VCF instances. So we'll take a look at that. But anyway, so under your VCF fleet, you would have multiple VCF instances. We'll take a look at that. Then you have your VCF operations and VCF automation to manage those. Now that used to be called ARIA for automation. Sorry, ARIA for automation, ARIA for operations, which used to be called vRealize for operations and vRealize automation. It's now called VCF. Okay, so we have this term called the fleet, and the fleet could be a single instance of a VCF environment or multiple instances of a VCF environment. I don't know if there's a maximum number. I've been looking around. I haven't seen one as of this recording. Now, what we're going to do in this video, we're going to look at a single instance, okay? And we're going to deploy this thing called the management domain, all right? Very similar to what we talked about back in version 5. So the management domain will have your vCenter server, will have NSX manager or managers. Back in version 5, you can only deploy 3 of them in a supported environment or production. You now get a choice of deploying a single manager deployment. I'll talk about that when we get there. You have a vSphere cluster, and you have this thing called the SDDC manager. Great, that's the management domain. Then you can create additional workload domains, just like in version 5. We used to call them VI workload domains. They dropped the VI, so it's now just called workload domains in version 9. And a workload domain will basically have, vSphere clusters. So this is where you have your workloads running, whatever they are, virtual desktops or whatever the case may be. Each workload domain will have its own set of vCenter servers and its own set of NSX managers. So you'll see there's the vCenter server and NSX managers for workload domain 1. The purple one over here is for workload domain 2, and then you got the orange ones over here. And these appliances run inside the management domain, just like in version 5, to be honest with you, okay? Now, when you go to deploy this, in version 5, you had this thing called Cloud Builder. So you would download this appliance. It was a fairly large appliance. You would deploy your ESXi hosts, 4 of them you needed, and then you use Cloud Builder and a spreadsheet to populate it. Again, you can watch those videos. Cloud Builder's gone. That spreadsheet thing is gone now. We have this thing called the VCF Installer, which is much nicer. And we're going to see that, okay? There's no more there's no more worksheet spreadsheet that you used to import into this cloud builder thing. All that's gone. So we'll actually see that. What also has changed as well is, so this is what we're going to do. We're basically going to deploy our single fleet. We're going to set up our management domain, and it's going to deploy our VCF for operations and VCF automation. So this whole process that I'm going to walk you through, once it starts going, it's going to take probably about 3.5 hours to complete. We're not going to sit there and wait for the whole thing, right? But you'll see the management domain, get the vCenter server, NSX, our vSphere cluster, and the SDDC manager. And you'll see you have additional workload domains. I'll do separate videos on that. We're just going to focus on this one right now. Sorry, get rid of that one down there. We're going to focus on that. One thing I'm going to mention here, because I know some people are going to make comments on it, the SDDC manager is being deprecated in favor of VCF for operations. So today it's there, but in the next release I hear, it could be like 9.1, don't quote me on that. Who knows? We'll see what the future brings. The SDDC manager will disappear. All right, so you'll see most of the stuff now in VCF 9, most of the management we don't do in the SDDC manager like we used to. We do it mainly in VCF operations. And I'll walk you through some videos on it. But we first need to get everything up and running. So why don't we do that? Now, let's get the VCF installer deployed, okay? So why don't we do that right now? Okay, so why don't we begin? We're going to install the VCF installer. Now, I just want to mention something about that. Let me just go back to my iPad here. Let's just go to a whiteboard. Now, first of all, when we set up our management domain, here's our management domain, management. You're typically going to have some ESX hosts. Notice I said ESX. They dropped the I in version 9, so it's no longer called ESXi, it's called ESX. Yeah, anyways. Now your management domain, in version 5, you have to have 4 ESX hosts. 1, 2, 3, 4. That requirement's gone now. Also in the management domain, you must use vCEN as the primary data store. That's gone now as well, so you don't have that. You can actually use NFS for your data store if you want to, for your management domain, or vCEN or fiber channel. Okay, so look at the requirements. You can go as little as 2 hosts here. I wouldn't do it. vCEN, you can go as low as 3 hosts. In my demo here, I'm going to stick with the 4 hosts that I've always done. Now, the VCF installer, there's that appliance. Now, this is really interesting. The VCF installer is an appliance. So VCF installer is an appliance. And you can deploy that on maybe a machine over here. Maybe it's a separate ESX hosts. And you're going to install the VC installer here to deploy your environment. That's fine. If you do that, the VCF installer knows to deploy the SDDC manager over here. You could also, let's say you're using fiber channel storage or NFS over here. Let me get rid of the vCEN. You could, if you already have storage set up here, you could technically install the VCF installer appliance on one of these hosts. It will detect that it's already inside the management domain. And it'll say, oh, you know what? I don't need to deploy the SDDC manager. I'm just going to convert myself to the SDDC manager. So it saves you a bit of time. What I'm going to do in my lab environment, I'm nested. So my 4 hosts are actually VMs running on top of a real host. I'm going to deploy mine on my real host, my VC installer, okay? So now you could install the VC installer on a workstation, a laptop running VMware Workstation, and do deployment from there. I would probably prefer a server type machine. It'll probably be faster. So anyways, that's what I'm going to do here. Let's go into my environment now. Let me log into my vCenter, and oops, nothing's getting tight there. Let's try this again. And I'm going to speed up some of these installers, or I might just stop it and then we'll see what happens at the very end type of thing. Okay, so you'll see in my environment I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I got a 5th host there. I'll tell you the reason why I got a 5th one there. I got my DNS servers here as well. I got a router. Anyway, you don't have to worry about those other ones. Here's my router and stuff like that. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to deploy my VCF installer now. So I'm just going to right click on this, say new appliance. You download it. And this is also the other tricky part here. If I go into here, if I go to VCF 9 installer, it says SDDC manager. So if you're looking specifically for the appliance saying VCF installer, it doesn't exist. It's the VCF SDDC manager appliance. That's the installer, okay? So that can be confusing. So, okay, great. I'm going to go next. I'm going to give it a name. I'll call it VCF installer. I'm going to put -2 on there because I've already got another one in the background. I'm going to go next. I'm going to go whatever there. And then it's going to ask me to review the details, pick the storage that it's going to be on, and we'll just go through and do the quick install. All right. Come on. Oh, there we go. So I'll agree with this. Again, read the licenses, go through that. It's going to ask me what data store. Again, it's a VM. What data store am I going to put it on? I'm just going to pop it on this one over here, my slow data store. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go thin provisioning. Actually, you know what? No, I'll put it on one of my faster ones here. I'm going to go thin provisioning, and I'm going to go next. You're going to pick your network here. Now, the VCF installer needs to be able to talk to the management network on your ESXi host. So your first network card, your management interface. So your installer should be on the VLAN that those hosts are on, or it should be on, it should be on the physical network. So it's got to be able to reach those hosts. Okay. In my lab environment, my network is called internal. So that's where my hosts are, okay? So whatever your network is, you want to make sure you pick the appropriate one. So I'm going to go next. Now it's coming up and asking me for passwords. Again, you'll notice over here it has to be 15 characters and a whole bunch of requirements there. I don't care if you see my password or not. It's getting blown away after this. So I'm going to copy and paste that. I'm going to scroll down, copy and paste. Now the host name, I'm going to call it VCF installer.vclass.edu. You must have DNS set up for this, okay? So your DNS servers all must be set up, forward and reverse lookups, or else this stuff fails, right? So mine's called VCF installer.vclass.edu. My NTP servers, again, NTP is also another important thing. You want to make sure you have that set up. I'm picking these NTP servers I've already previously used. What's the IP address of this going to be? My VCF installer, in my lab environment, it's going to be 172.20.10.161. Okay, great. What's the subnet? Mine's going to be 255.255. And what's its default gateway, right? So you'll specify your IP stuff. Now, again, make sure you got forward and reverse lookups. I don't think it's so critical with the VCF installer, but if you're going to be using it as the SDDC manager, you want to make sure that's set up as well. What's my domain here? Again, mine is vclass.edu, and my search path is going to be vclass.edu, and then it's going to be asking for my domain server. So these are my my DNS servers. I only got the one in my environment. So sorry, that's actually the wrong one. That's the one I want. Okay. So great. I'm going to click next. Gives me a summary. Check it all out. Make sure it's okay, and you hit finish, and it starts deploying the appliance. Okay. So away I go, it's starting to deploy the appliance. Now, while that's deploying, why don't we do something here? Let's check my ESXi host. So you must deploy your ESXi host. Now, one of the things I'm going to show you, in my lab environment, these are VMs. And if I actually show you here, you'll see I've got 24 virtual CPUs and 96 gigs of memory inside each of these. That's pretty intense, right? And the reason why I got 24 virtual CPUs is because when it deploys ARIA automation, that appliance needs 24 virtual CPUs, okay? So if you decide, well, I don't need that much, you get a choice of not deploying the automation, ARIA automation, which I'll show you. You can get away with as low as 16 here, because NSX will need at least 16, okay? So this thing's, not for the faint of heart. The other thing, too, is let me go to... Now, one of the things is when you do a fresh install of your ESXi hosts, okay, if I go to here, let me just go to one of my hosts here, host 1. I know I'm using self-signed certificates. Let's look at the certificate here. When I look at the certificate, you'll see the common name. It's the name of the host, which, great, that sounds good. That doesn't happen when you first install ESX. Okay, let me go to my host 5. This is the reason why I have a host 5 there, just to show you this, because I got all my other ones all set up. So before I even start, deploying VCF, deploy your ESXi hosts. You need to set up their NTP on those. If you don't know how to deploy ESX, watch my videos on it. It's pretty simple, right? Deploy them, set up your DNS, set up your management network, and then also make sure you got NTP set up as well. The other thing is, let me look at host 5 here. Let's go to site a-esx-05. I'm still used to saying ESXi.vclass.edu. Okay, now let's look at this one here, because I kind of just spun this one up. Notice the name here says localhost local domain. It does not match the host name, okay? So you need to fix that before you start your deployment of your VCF management domain. It will come back and fail. It'll say, hey, the host name doesn't match this certificate, right? So you need to, again, unless you're using your own self-signed certificates, maybe I'll do a separate video on that, but I need to go in and fix this. So actually, if I had SSH enabled on that host, I could SSH into it. I don't. Let me just go into the host itself. So pretend it's a physical host, and I'm going to remotely connect to it. I'm going to open up the console on that, and I'm just going to hit F2 to log in. And then I'm going to go into troubleshooting options. If I had SSH enabled, I could have SSH into it. I don't. I'm going to enable the shell. Now I'm going to hit Alt F1, and I'm down at the shell, the prompt. So I'll log in as root. Okay. Now I'm going to, if I type in host name here, you'll see, okay, so the host name, that's the host name. Oh, interesting, I got .local. Doesn't really matter. I need to change my directory, cd space sbin. Then I need to run this command, generate certificates. There we go. I just generated a certificate to match that host name. All right, let me hit Alt F2 to get out. I'm going to disable my shell. And I'm going to go in here and say, restart management agents. And I'm going to say, yep, F11, F11, okay. And you need to do this on all your hosts, unless, of course, you're replacing it with your own self-signed certificates. And again, certificates can be done after you deploy everything as well. But this has to be done prior to deploying your management domain. So it looks like it's done. Let's hit enter. Let me exit to get out of here. And let's try this again now. Let me go back to here, close this, I don't care about that. And let's go into my host 5. So 5 dot, and let's go into the certificate, and we see it now matches, okay? So it matches the host name. So you need to do that, even if you're using self-signed search, or the installer, when it goes to do the validation, it will fail. So I'm not going to be playing with that host. We don't care. I've already got my other 4 hosts up and running. So let's see what we've got here. And it looks like deployed okay. And what we're going to do now is actually log into it, okay? So where is it? vClass. I put it in temp. There it is, VCF Installer 2. I'm going to right-click on that. I'm going to power on that VM. Okay? And I'm going to give it a few minutes to power on, and then we'll connect to it. So I'll be right back. Hey, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hey, click that subscribe button, totally free. So we'll be right back. So we're back. The VCF Installer didn't take that long to install. So I'm just going to type in its fully qualified domain name, and I'm going to log into it. Actually, I probably should have typed in HTTPS. There we go. And again, I'm going to log in with the local admin account that was created during the install, and I'll type in the passwords that I also specified as well. So when you get to this part here, the first thing you need to do is download the binaries. So this is different from version 5. Version 5, we had the Cloud Builder appliance, already had the binaries there, which was kind of nice. But now you need to download it. Okay, no problems. And you got to, so what we need to do is download binaries over here. Notice it says no depot connection. Let's click on that. And then over here, connect to the online depot. You click on configure. You'll need to specify your download token. Don't worry, that doesn't work. Hey, let's give it a shot, right? If you got a proxy server, you'll set that up. It's not going to work, okay? So this is where you need to have this token, right? Now, I've done a whole video on this, especially for vMug Advantage users. You're going to want to watch that, okay? So I'm setting up an offline depot. I'm going to go configure, and I'm going to specify my offline depot. Oops. And specify username, password. Now, I've got a video on showing you how to do this. I'm going to click on configure, and, oh, wait, go, whatever, Chrome. And then there we go. There's my offline depot. And I've also shown this in the video. So right now, I'm going to deploy VMware Cloud Foundation. I'll do a separate video on vSphere Foundation, but let's start off with the hard one first. So I can select all these and then hit download. So I'm going to hit download all these, and you'll see it's going to start downloading from my offline depot. I'm not going to make you watch this, so we're just going to basically, like I said, I've already got this all recorded if you want to watch that. So this will probably take about 20 minutes to do, or 15 minutes, I can't remember. So we'll be right back, and then we'll continue on. Okay, so we're back. Everything's been uploaded and validated. It took about 15 minutes or so. So let's go back to here. Let's click on return home. We're pretty much ready to rock and roll at this point. We see everything's downloaded and looking good. So now I'm going to go to the deploy wizard here. Let me go full screen. On the deploy wizard, what do I want to deploy? VMware Cloud Foundation or vSphere Foundation? I'll do a separate video on the vSphere Foundation, but let's click on Cloud Foundation. Now it comes up and says, is this a brand new deployment, or is this a VCF instance in an existing VCF fleet? In other words, you already have other VCF instances. This is a brand new one. So I'm going to keep the default and go next. Now, existing components. Do I already have VCF operations and vCenter server? I'll probably do videos on doing upgrades and imports and converts. But for now, this is all brand new. So no, I don't have any existing stuff. I'm going to click on next. Now it's asking me what version. That's the only one I got downloaded. What's the instance name of my VCF? I'm going to call it something that makes sense, but I'll say VCF demo, whatever. And then what's my management? Actually, no, I'll just leave that. Yeah, I'll say VCF domain. Then what's the management domain going to be? I'll call it management-dom for domain. Sorry. Now, here it talks advanced networking configuration. I want to connect VCF operations automation instance to a different distributed port groups or NSX segments. It says by default it will configure all the operations and automations use the same distributed port groups specified in our configuration, which you'll see later on. We got to go through these 10 steps. I don't need anything fancy. I'm just going to leave this basically as is because this is my only VCF instance. Quite possibly, maybe if you had another one, you may want to specify that, but I don't. Now, over here under high availability, this is where it's different in version 5. In version 5, you had to deploy 3 NSX managers, and there was ways around it, and I had videos on that, but not in a production environment. You now can actually go single mode and deploy a single NSX manager. There's other stuff that gets affected by this, which you'll see as we go through here. But anyways, just for resources in my lab environment, I'm going to go single or simple mode. I would not recommend this in production. That's just my personal opinion. What's my DNS? What's my domain name? My domain name here is going to be vclass.edu. I'm changing everything up. What's my DNS server? My DNS server here is .11. And then my NTP servers here, I got to match it. Bear with me a second. And okay, so I'm going to specify that DNS server, comma, and I'll put another, NTP server. Do I want it to automatically generate passwords for me? I'm not going to. We'll come back and give you a password file afterwards. I'm just going to say, and I'm just going to leave the enable customer experience involvement program. I'm going to go next. Now it's asking me for my VCF operations. What's the what size of appliance do I want here? I'm just going to go small. Notice again the number of CPUs. Again, this is really going to depend on how many instances this thing's going to manage, right? I'm just going to select small over here. Now, operations, primary fully qualified domain name. What's the fully qualified domain name of this appliance? And I've got vclass.edu. You need forward and reverse lookups. Notice it's not asking me for an IP here. It's going to do a reverse lookup. If it doesn't find it, it's going to give you an error. Now, what password do I want to specify? I'm going to use the same password as before, and I'm going to copy that. If you're doing something what I'm doing here, I'm not copying and pasting passwords. You want to make sure you got it right the first time. And again, I don't care if you see my password here. This stuff gets blown away. What's the fleet management appliance fully qualified domain name? This used to be the lifecycle manager. So that's the fleet management appliance. And I'm going to call mine VCF LCM vclass.edu. Do I want to use the same password? Sure, why not? Saves me doing some typing, but that's up to you. And then the collector appliance. Again, this is all part of operations. It's got a collector appliance. I called mine vccollectors.edu. All that's looking good, okay? And then I'll use the same password. So that saves some steps there in typing in passwords. We're on number 4 here. Now, automation. I wanted to connect the VCF automation instance later. You can optimize. You can optionally pick this. This appliance here, again, what's the fully qualified domain name for this? I call mine VCF auto.vclass.edu. And again, I would type in that password. Whoops, wrong key. Let me just check that. That looks good. I'm pasting that in. So this is a fairly large appliance. That's that one I told you that takes 24 virtual CPUs, right? And if you don't have enough, it's going to fail during the deployment. Now, node IP, it's asking me what additional IPs do I want to allocate to this. One's going to be a node. Here they say automation requires a single node and a simple deployment. In addition, provides a second address to be used when creating nodes for upgrades. It uses this temporary address for doing upgrades. So this is why it's asking you for these. How do I want to prefix these nodes when they get created? I'm just going to call my VCF auto, again, whatever you want. And then the internal cluster slider as well. It defaulted at this. I'm just going to leave it at the defaults. I'm okay with it. I'm not sure when you would change that. Somebody knows, chime in down below. Let's click next. Now it's asking me my vCenter server information here. So vclass.edu, what size, appliance. This is going to depend. Again, this size here is going to depend on how many VMs are running inside your management domain, how many workload domains you're going to have. So all this stuff has to match up. So I'm just going to select small for mine. And then what's the data center name? It's going to call it this one here. Management DOM dash looks like DCL01 and the cluster name. Again, you can change all these names. And the single sign-on domain vCenter.local sounds good to me. I'm just going to leave all these defaults. You could change them. And then what's the administrator passwords and the root passwords? Again, I just copied and paste those. So again, you specify your cluster names and stuff, or you can stick with the defaults. The NSX Manager appliance, again, how big do you want this? Medium, large, or extra large? This is going to depend on basically how many. For your management domain, medium should be more than enough for you, to be honest with you. You shouldn't have anything more than that. When you get into workload domains, that might differ, right? So medium's pretty much all you need for management domain. I can't see you going any larger than that. Unless, of course, you're going to add multiple clusters to your management domain, and you're not going to have workload domains, then you may have to have it at a larger size here. But for the most part, you should be okay. Look at the sizing of NSX Manager, okay? What's the fully qualified? Now it's asking me to cluster fully qualified domain name. Well, hang on a second. I'm only deploying one manager because I specified simple install. It still wants that cluster fully qualified domain name. So mine is site-a-nsx-mgr.vclass.edu. And what's the appliance name? It's funny how it doesn't remember this one. Mine's site-a-nsx-mgr-01.vclass.edu. And then the passwords. I'm just going to put it in the same passwords that I had for all the others. Again, follow your security guidelines. They may not have the same passwords. It really depends. So all that looks good to me. Let's go next. Again, notice it didn't ask me for IPs because it's doing reverse lookups on all that. So this is why it's important you have DNS all set up. What kind of storage do you want? So now this is new in version 9. You can have VMFS on fiber channel. So maybe my server's got fiber channel adapters hooked to a fiber channel storage, and I've already got volumes set up. So you need to have those volumes already formatted and everything before you even get to this stage. Or you have an NFS. Notice it says NFS version 3. So again, for the management domain, it has to be version 3. Anything after that, any workload domains and stuff, it could be version 4.1 of NFS. This is what we got for our choices. I'm just going to go with vSAN. Do I want to go with express storage architecture, original? Just in my lab environment, I'm going to go with original storage architecture just because I just feel like it. Again, your hardware in the real world needs to support this stuff. If you're using express storage architecture, it has to be vSAN ready nodes. So all that stuff from a support perspective. I'm just going to go with original storage architecture. What's the name of my data store? It sounds, I don't know, I can change this afterwards, but yeah, okay, that's the name of the vSAN data store. And it fails to tolerate, what do you want to be your default over here? And do I want to enable dedupe and compression with original storage architecture? If this is something you want to, if you're thinking about doing it, you want to do it now than after the fact, because it has to move things around and do like a reformat, which could be a real pain in the butt. So this is something, if you're using original storage architecture and you want to do deduplication compression, you want to do this right now in the beginning so all the drives get formatted properly. I don't care in my lab environment. I'm going to go next. Host now. What's the host password? So I'll type in the host passwords there. And then I got 4 hosts. I'm going to click on add host, and then I type in the host. So I did that ESX-01.vclass.edu. I hit add. Let me just copy and paste that. And change the name. Oops. Number 2. Number 3. Again, like I said before, you don't necessarily need to have 4 here. With vSAN, you can get away with 3 now. I'm just going to stick with the 4. So there's the thumbprints. Are those the actual thumbprints? You want to check that out. For me, I'm going to say, yeah, confirm all the thumbprints. I'm going to go next. Now, if I didn't change that certificate, this is where it would fail. It would come back and say, hey, your certificate local, blah, 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 local domain doesn't match the host name. Obviously, I fixed that on mine. Now, over here, your management, now it's asking you for network information, right? So what's the management VLAN? In my lab environment, I just have VLAN 0. My MTU 1500 is fine in my lab environment. What's the subnet for my management domain in my lab environment? Mine's 172.20.10/24, and its gateway is 172.20.10.10. Then it's also going to create this VM management network as well. To me, it's the same network. In your environment, you may have something different. You may have a VLAN for management VMs and a VLAN for your ESXi host management. That's quite valid, okay? So they could be in different VLANs, but in mine, it's the same. I'm going to say use the same here. Now, what's my vMotion network? Mine's on a 20 VLAN. My MTU size at 9,000 looks good. Again, here you got to make sure your physical environment supports that. Just don't say, yeah, 9,000 is good and go with it. You know, you want to make sure that's supported. My CIDR for my vMotion network is 172.20.10 network. Sorry, 172.20.20 network, and my range I'm going to start it at 172.20.20.51, and it's going to go to 172.20.20.59. And again, you put in your appropriate range, and my gateway. That's my vMotion network. Since I'm doing vSAN, it's going to ask me for the stuff for vSAN. So my vSAN network's on the 30, 172.20.30. My MTU, yes, I've got 9,000 set up. My gateway is 172.20.30.10, and my IP range are going to go 172, not 20. It would come back and give me an error on that. 172.20.30.51 and 30.59. That's my environment. So again, you put in the appropriate IPs for your environment. And we're on number 10 now. This is the part where you're setting up your distributed switch. You have to ask yourself, how many network cards does my physical host have? If I only got 2 network cards, then the default is basically, that's all you got. Notice it says, this profile is recommended in the default configuration provides unified fabric for all traffic types. What it's saying here is you're going to have one distributed switch, and all traffic is going to go across that distributed switch. So maybe you only get 2 NICs. That distributed switch will have 2 uplinks from each host, and you'll have your vMotion traffic, vSAN traffic, you'll have your NSX traffic, management traffic all across that. Or you can say, no, I don't want that. I've got 4 NICs. I'm going to have 2 for, I'm going to use the first distributed switch will be used for everything else, and the second one will be used for vSAN traffic. Or you could say, well, I got 4 NICs, and now I want to have NSX traffic separation. So everything will use the first, my first distributed switch will be for vSAN and management and all that stuff. And then the second distributed switch will be for NSX overlay traffic. All right. I'm going to pick that because that's just what I want. Now, if you got more than that, if you got like 6 or more cards, you can go into custom switch configuration and really configure this thing to whatever you want. Maybe I'll give two NICs for the management and stuff, 2 NICs for vSAN, 2 NICs for NSX, that type of thing. So you got some flexibility here. So I'm going to pick this one. This is what I want. And notice over here it comes up and there's a little red mark there. So it's saying, hey, I got to configure, because I got 4 NICs, I got to configure my NSX environment. So let me open this up, and you'll see this will be the distributed switch name for my NSX. The MTU is, yep, that's good. That's what I support. I'm going to have 2 uplinks on there, okay? You know, I can have 1. You don't want to have 1. If I have more NICs, I could put more on there. Then it's going to ask me for the NICs and the uplinks. Now notice it's already picking these for me, right? It says, oh, second adapter, I'm going to use these physical NICs, right? Then that's fine. Then over here, it's asking me the network traffic type. This is basically saying, do I want to have multiple TEPs or not? If I do explicit failover, I'll have 1 TEP IP, and if something, and all traffic goes through 1 uplink. If something should happen, that TEP will fail over to the other. If you don't know what a TEP is, you got to watch my NSX stuff. All right, I'm going to just leave the default route based on source port, and both links are active. Okay, so each host will get 2 TEP IPs. And that's considered, I don't like using the term best practice, but that's kind of what they're saying here. The transport zone, it's going to create this transport zone for me. Yep, that looks good. I'll just leave the name there. What VLAN? This is what I got to specify. My tunnels, my Geneva tunnels will be going through VLAN 11. How am I assigning IPs to my taps on my host? I'm going to use a pool here, and you give the name of a pool. I called mine VTAP pool, whatever. I don't got much of an imagination. Give it the description. What's the subnet that VTAP pool will be on? Again, mine will be 172.20.11.0. This is going to create all these pools for me in NSX if you're familiar with NSX. If you're not familiar with NSX, this stuff sounds like, something weird. You need to learn a bit on the NSX. And then this is my pool. It's going to start at, my first TEP will take 11.150. My ending one will take 11.170. Make sure you got enough range for all yours. And then my TEP's gateway address is there. So I just configured all this stuff for my NSX overlay. I'm going to click next. Now it's asking me for the fully qualified domain name for the SDDC manager. Again, notice, remember I said if I deployed this on one of the hosts in the management domain, it would convert the installer to the SDDC manager. In this case, I'm not doing that, so it's going to ask me for the fully qualified domain name, and there's mine right there, and I got to type in the password. And let me just check that. Yeah, that looks good. Let me just copy and paste all that. I'm not a big fan of copy and pasting here because if I made a typo there and I don't realize it and I try to log in, right? And at that point, I'm going to hit next, and it comes through and asks me to review it. So I'll go through and review that. Okay, so you want to check all this stuff out, make sure it's all okay. And I got the right domains here, all that stuff. And you hit next. Okay. Now it's going to validate everything. This process will probably take about 10 minutes, if I remember correctly. Your environment may differ, but like I said, once this validates, everything should be okay, and we should be able to deploy it. All right. Notice you also have at this point here, let me show this, download JSON spec, right? So what I could have done is actually loaded up a JSON spec in the beginning. So maybe you've done this, and now you want to deploy another VCF instance, very similar to this, but maybe change some names. You can modify the JSON spec. So one of the advantages of deploying the VCF installer on a separate host is you can now use that to deploy other VCF instances. Copy that JSON, make some changes, boom, spin up your next VCF instance. Do the same thing for the third and the fourth, the fifth, right? if you deploy the VCF installer on top of one of the hosts that's going to be in your management domain, then that's going to be converted to the SDDC manager, and that's only going to be used at one time, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Notice over here, vSAN's disk availability. So it's actually checking for this. I'm in a nested environment, and there's challenges with express storage architecture in a nested environment with VCF. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's a lot more pickier. That's why I picked the original storage architecture, because I don't want to mess around. There's some fixes on the interweb type of thing. Now it's checking my network configuration. It's checking all these. So all those gateways have to be pingable, okay? It's doing also my network, my vMotion, vSAN, and my overlay. All that stuff has to be pingable and set up. So we're almost done here. I'll just let this run. I'll probably speed it up, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so we are back. Everything's successful. Again, I can download this JSON if I want to, as I mentioned. If there was a problem here, you get a chance to rerun. If there was warnings here, like I've run into situations where for whatever reason my NTP wasn't syncing or something like that, I would acknowledge it. So warnings, you can acknowledge it and continue. Errors, anything that fails, you have to go back and fix it. That's it. I'm going to hit deploy now. And at that point, you'll see, let me just get rid of this down below here. You'll see this portion here of deploying vCenter. So it'll walk you through the whole instance of deploying here, right? Then you can go through the workflow here. Let me go like full screen. And again, you can go through here and actually look at the individual workflows and examine it. This is going to take about 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours in my lab environment. So we're not going to sit here and watch this. I'm going to cut this off at this point. We'll come back when it's done, and we'll just take it from there. Okay, everybody, we're back. Actually, let this thing just run overnight because I didn't feel like sitting here. So let me log back in to the VCF installer. And let's see how things... So we see here, previous deployment completed, successful. Let's hit the view details. So again, you see over here, kind of went through. If there's a problem, obviously it will come up and show you a red mark where it kind of had some issues. I ran into some issues with configuring NSX because my old DNS servers, it needed to support eDNS, and mine didn't. That's how old it was. That's why I had to create a new DNS server. Anyways, again, you can open up the workflows here. You can see everything. And again, if there was problems, it would be reflected here. So looks good. Let's see how long it took anyways. Sorry, let's go back into here. And it looks like about 6:20. And that can't be right. Oh yeah, sorry, that's about right. Yeah, 6:20. And it completed around 11:30. So 5 hours. Quite a long time. Actually, the reason why it took so long on my machine is because I actually had my ESXi hosts on my slow SAS array and not my NVRAM. So that's gonna, sorry, not my SDS solid state drive. Sorry about that, folks. So again, your mileage is going to vary depending on how fast your servers are and stuff. But I've done it in the past, done about 3 hours to do this. This look obviously a little longer. So from 6:30 roughly my time to about 11:30, so about 5 hours. Quite a long time. Anyways, let's just see what it did here. Let's kill this. Let's log into, I'm going to log into the SDDC manager. And I know I might get a few people frowning on that, but anyways, we're just going to do it anyway. Site A-SDDC manager. The SDDC manager is going to be deprecated, right, in the next version. So technically speaking, you shouldn't even really be doing anything in there. I don't know if there's certain things that you have to do in there today. I haven't compiled a list. I'm going to go to advanced. I'm going to present here. Now you might be wondering, so let's log in as VCF. No, actually no, log in as administrator. vSphere.local and So I hear that this is going to go away. You should be doing everything in VCF Ops. The reason why it's still there, you can actually see right here if I open this up, it's got this big message here. So it did a check here, DNS check, platform forward, reverse lookups. It did a bunch of stuff there. Everything is looking good. Like I said, this is going to be deprecated in the next release from what I understand. You should be doing everything in VCF Ops. You might be wondering, why do we need this then? Because VCF Ops basically still have links that point back to this. Okay, so until they get everything ported into VCF Ops, this is still there. We still need it. Okay, so we'll just ignore that. Let's log into my vCenter server, right? And we'll see what we see here. So you see, there's my management domain. Here's my 4 hosts. You see, one of the hosts here is complaining. I know it's going to be host memory usage. It's complaining about that. Look at that. The memory usage on it's fairly high, and I can pretty much know exactly the reason for that. If I click on VMs over here, it's this VCF VCF automation appliance. That's that one I told you that has 24 processors. It's got 96 gigs of memory. So pretty intense machine here. My VMs here, this is a nested environment. My hosts I should probably bump them up to 128 gig, to be honest with you. You see all the appliances that are deployed. You have the SDDC manager, the vCenter server, pretty straightforward on those. You see the NSX manager, there's only one because I decided to do the simple deployment. VCF Auto and VCF Ops, again, only got one of those. It's not a cluster deployment because I only decided to deploy one. See, there's Lifecycle Manager, and again, you have your Ops collector. So these are all the different VMs that are deployed. Let's look at my NSX. Let's take a look at that real quick. And I'm going to log in as admin. And I'm just going to, clear all this stuff. Skip all that. And let's go back to this here. And then under networking, if I click on that, if I go to network topology, there's going to probably be nothing there. There's this thing called a default transit gateway. I'll do a separate video on that. You'll see there's no tier 1s, there's no tier 0s, there's no segments, which is rather interesting because in VCF 5, we had this thing called application virtual networks, and that's where we deployed all the ARIA stuff. What's going on here? We deployed technically the ARIA stuff. That's VCF automation and VCF operations. It's going on regular port groups now. So they made some changes here in version 9. Let's look at system here. I should have my cluster, fabric, hosts. Over here is my management cluster. I got my 4 hosts. They're all prepared. I've got my TAP IPs, multi-taps. It's all configured for me, right? So that's cool. There's no edge nodes. We don't have any edge nodes. We'll talk about deploying those. There's a couple ways we can deploy it. Let's look at VCF Ops. How about that? VCF, what is the VCF Ops? .vclass.edu. And again, local account. Admin. And here we go. Now, so you see that's all configured. Let's look at VCF automation as well. VCF, is it dash? No, just auto.vclass.edu. This is kind of a tricky one. It's going to ask you for the organization name. We haven't created one yet. So I'm going to go into system. Let's go into system. And then my default user ID will be admin. And then the password that I set during the deployment using the installer. And at that point, come on, should come up. There we go. I'll probably do separate videos on all this. Talks about, enabling the supervisor. I'll do separate videos on this, but for now, anyways, let's go back to my installer here, and just VCF-installer. Oops. And let's go to view details, and then I'm just going to kill this. And the reason why I'm showing you this because it's all deployed, but over here, next steps, log into VCF operations, navigate to license, and apply your licenses. Right now, I got a 90-day evaluation license when you actually do this deployment. So you need to actually log in, and it gives you the link to log in, the user ID, and even shows you the password. So I'm already logged in, right? Let's click on it anyways. So Then it's telling us to go to license management here. I can't fully demo this. I don't have licenses. Us VMUG Advantage members are still waiting for that. I'm hoping to hear something at Explore next week, or sorry, the week after. But anyways, you click on registration. It tells you to start the registration process. It tells you to log into the VCF Business Services on Broadcom, right? So you got to log in. If I click on this, it's going to ask me to log in. It's going to fail because I don't have an account. Then you create this activation code, and then you enter the activation code. Okay, so hopefully I'll be able to do a video on this sometime down the road, but right now, again, I don't have any licenses here, and this is good for 90 days. And we'll talk about VCF operations. I'll do some other videos. I think that is about it. I don't think there's anything else I need to kind of cover. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it useful. Leave comments, questions down below. And please consider supporting the channel by subscribing. It's totally easy, just and free. Hit that subscribe button. Helps me help you folks, right? But that's it. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.